Hello there lovely people, it's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're finally going to review for you LA Noire, and I do apologise for my voice, I'm still on the tail end of something awful. This review was originally written by the wonderful Damien McFerrin and adapted for video by me. But that's more than enough waffling, let's dive right into things. Back in 2011, LA Noire was quite the revelation. It managed to seriously capture the feel of the 1940s Los Angeles in a manner that was so convincing and immersive that it put many live-action TV shows and Hollywood movies pretty much to shame. Following the exploits of the earnest Cole Phelps, the now-defunct Team Bondi's one and only masterpiece managed to combine snappy writing and engaging action to produce one of the most mature video games we've yet to see. And that's not just because of the lovely nudity, violence and gore on show, but also because of its slow-burning storytelling, impeccable attention to detail, and uncharacteristically accomplished acting. Made possible, of course, only by the groundbreaking facial animation technology that had only previously really been seen in films. Despite being published by Grand Theft Auto owner Rockstar Games, LA Noire was not simply a 1940s version of that controversial series. It instead represented a spiritual successor to Sony's The Getaway, a 2002 PlayStation 2 release from the same director Brendan McNamara. Team Bondi may no longer be around, but its magnum opus, and in fact its Magnus-only release, is getting a second chance on the Switch. You start your adventure as being a humble beat cop, and this game's opening missions serve as a handy tutorial that guides you through the game's various mechanics. These can be roughly broken down into three distinct sections, namely hunting down for clues at a crime scene, chasing down suspects either on foot or by car, and interrogation. There's also a little bit of shooting that goes on, but it's not really worth paying attention to. In the first, you'll have to snoop around for vital pieces of evidence, which not only give additional leads to go on, but also arm you with the facts that you'll need to nail guilty parties during the interrogation. HD Rumble is employed well to alert you to objects that you can interact with, but not everything that you can pick up and inspect is connected to the case at hand. Oftentimes they're just bottles. Combing the evidence for that vital clue can become a little bit laborious, but you're always given a tight perimeter to explore, and the game tells you through musical cues when a crime scene is all done and dusted. Rockstar's made quite a bit of a song and dance about the new touchscreen-based interface that is included on the Switch port, which of course can only be used in handheld mode. But in all honesty, it's just easier to stick to the standard controls. We also turned off the motion controls, which, whilst they are a nice addition, don't really add anything to the game. Car chases happen fairly often in the world of LA Noire, and despite the Switch's lack of analog triggers, they're exciting enough even if the suspects you're chasing often slow down or drive erratically to the point where they're practically begging you to just put them out of their misery. Elsewhere, you're also expected to tail a suspect vehicle without alerting their attention. It's relatively tense but ultimately superficial, as even weaving off the road and ignoring red lights isn't going to spook the suspect as long as you remain well behind. You can also drive around Los Angeles, and it's one of the game's admittedly piecemeal attempts to offer freedom, and it's genuinely stunning how well the city has been rendered and how much there is to explore. But like its spiritual predecessor The Getaway, the city feels bare and lifeless at times. There's not a whole lot of drive to go around and explore, and it's a shame because it really is nice to look at. During some cases, the suspects will escape on foot, meaning you've got to guide ex-Army Cole Phelps up and around the whole of LA in order to try and track them down. You'll be climbing up drain pipes, jumping across roofs, all the things you'd expect a 1940s cop to not actually do in real life. It's like the films, isn't it? These bits are genuinely exciting and give a really nice change of pace from the standard drive around or just chatting to someone. Oftentimes they'll end in a confrontation and you're going to have to beat the living daylights out of your opponent in order to make sure that justice is dealt in the most violent way possible. You'll also have to sometimes indulge in a shootout in order to bag your man. Unfortunately, combat is a little bit too stiff to be genuinely thrilling, and the gunplay is painfully awkward during some missions, especially when using cover. Enemies don't really make any attempt to move around the area, and instead are basically just waiting for you to wait for them to pop out of cover and pop their noggin off. The third element of the game is probably the one that had the most impact back in 2011. LA Noire boasts some of the most convincing virtual actors that you'll ever see in a video game, even today. The use of real actors means there's a more professional air to the entire production. But the real star of the show here has to be the motion capture software. Whilst the character models can look a little bit janky at times, their movement is second to none. Faces move like faces, and that's sad that that's genuinely a revelation. And what's more, this isn't all just glitz and glamour. You need to look at your suspects and work out whether they're lying or not by the subtle changes, and sometimes not so subtle changes, in their facial features. The only downside of this is it can make the traditional motion caption software used to capture the body movements seem a little bit puppet-like in comparison. Another interesting change is that when you're in an interrogation, the old-fashioned truth, doubt, and lie options have been replaced by good cop, bad cop, and accuse. This may seem a little bit needless, but honestly, it's a really good change, because the original three were sometimes really not very specific. For example, if you doubted what someone said, Cole might make a sarcastic comment about it, or they might smash the suspect's face into a wall. It's maybe still a little bit too vague though, and just to be honest, a traditional dialogue option menu, as you see in countless other games, would probably make much more sense. It would somewhat spoil the surprise and some of the spontaneity of what's going to happen, but at the same time, we want to be able to know what we're going to say. Also, it's sometimes possible to trip up the game's narrative at certain points as well. For example, during one case it becomes clear that a suspect's partner has been having an affair with someone else, and the clue is a photograph signed by his mistress. It's not exactly subtle. However, we were able to open up this dialogue option with the wife before we even found this clue. Later in the game, we visited a key location in the case and spoke to a chief suspect, yet just a few minutes later, another detective bumped into us and gave this suspect and the location we'd just been to as a potential lead. I know they didn't have mobile phones back then, but Jesus. It's a sign of just how grand the storytelling is that these moments happen at all. And for the most part, each case flows logically, and there's a satisfying arc to investigation, even if it's impossible to really fail in any case. Even if you get multiple questions wrong, it rarely leads to a dead end and you just get a lower score for that mission. But for all its linearity, LA Noire's investigative sequences are rarely anything less than enjoyable. It's almost impossible not to feel a twinge of satisfaction each and every time you corner a suspect with irrefutable evidence or make them trip over their story and reveal the actual truth. From a technical standpoint, LA Noire on Switch is utterly remarkable. Yes, it's certainly not a new game, but to be able to play this on the move with no real loss in visual fidelity is just amazing. Even in handheld mode, the game's 720p graphics are impressive, but play docked and you'll appreciate the full effect of 1080p loveliness. It's not entirely flawless, however. There are a few moments in both modes where the frame rate plunges and Phelps appears to be moving in slow motion. These generally seem to happen when you're on foot and you're moving through some very detailed area. It's by no means a deal breaker, and whilst it might lack the visual finery seen in the PS4 and Xbox One versions, LA Noire on the Switch still looks amazing, and the fact that you can play it anywhere is just to die for. LA Noire had a troubled development to say the least, but despite all that, it's heartening to see that players are given the chance to revisit Los Angeles on the Nintendo Switch. Whilst the game does have, and let's not beat around the bush here, myriad faults, it's still a wonderful experience with the combination of the voice acting, the facial animations. It really immerses you and makes you feel like you're really back in 1940s Los Angeles. It wasn't perfect back in 2011, and that's still the case in 2017, yet it somehow manages to be more than the sum of its parts. No doubt it'll be regarded as a pioneering classic for years and years to come. There are few games in the world that treat the player to such a grown-up and mature experience as this, and that's paramount for the video game industry as a whole.